Three, two, one. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the What's That Major podcast. I decided just saying another episode instead of saying the X because at one point I will probably get mixed up. So I am your host, Vanessa, and today I am joined by Miriam Levy. So, Miriam has an associate's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in sociology with an emphasis in gender from California State University Northridge, and a master's degree in sociology also from Cal State University Northridge. Miriam is currently a professor of sociology, and I've been given the great privilege of interviewing her. So, Miriam, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Vanessa. Thank you.
So, before we get into anything, for those who are interested in this field, what is the study of sociology?
Very good question. So we study groups of people, and we specifically focus on mainly social problems, since obviously there's a lot to do in our society. But we focus the wide lens. So the lens is on the group, the family, the institutions such as government, education. We definitely take a look at the smaller details. So we do take in consideration fields like psychology, economics, philosophy, political science all fit into what we do. But mainly we really focus on the society and its impact on individuals over a lifetime. And so we really focus on specific areas, all the isms, racism, sexism, ageism, classism. These are all areas in which we pay a lot of focus, and specifically on patterns that get repeated, right? So once students in general learn those patterns, then hopefully they're using them in their own lives to make some shifts. And sometimes those shifts are really difficult because we don't have, the resources sometimes to be able to make those changes. But really, the start of it is really finding out the impact that society has on us, and of course, media is another big bubble.
Hmm. So, how or when did you know that this was the right path for you, or you became interested in it?
Very good question. So my path was an indirect one, like it is for many community college students. I graduated high school at 16 years old because of my parents immigrated to the U.S. Then I was a little bit ahead in education at that point, but because they were not very educated about the educational system, I kind of graduated in high school and I was kind of floundering. So I went to work, which is what I needed to do at the time. And then, about 5 years into working for a variety of companies and working a lot of hours, I really burned out. And I was at a friend's house, and the friend was helping her sister register for classes at a community college. And the light bulb came on, and I said, okay, this might be the right time for me. So I went to LA Valley College. And sociology was not in the forefront. I kind of went to see a counselor, and they told me, here are the 5 classes you need to take. And sociology one happened to be one of them. And then I took a personal development course, which are offered to the counseling department. And they did kind of an evaluation, right? And I found that really everything I was leaning towards was working with people and really a lot of social interaction. And so that became my focus. And then every class was just, it wasn't work. It was just really love of learning in general.
Hmm. Yeah. So, going into it, I assume being that you went straight into college, there wasn't necessarily I guess a demand for it as maybe you would go into it university because there are some majors where there's a high demand for it and some people are put even on waiting lists for that major. So did anything change in regards to the demand for it when you went from college to your master's or your bachelor's?
Um, I wasn't that hip in terms of doing research, in terms of, marketing demand. Obviously, we know a lot more now, so we're able to give that information to students that this is the kind of fields that you can get into with a sociology degree. And
Mhm.
since my path was actually indirect, right? I didn't go from high school to even a community college, right? It was work in between. living and outside of education was actually really good for me because I learned a lot of skills that actually were helpful in me being successful in education. But really, I was I was told very early on I would never find a full-time teaching job, and I got a full-time teaching job in 4 years. Right,
Mhm.
so there's always going to be the people to tell you, but I knew in my gut that this was the right field. I really was very passionate, and it wasn't until I kind of was almost in my batch at the end of my bachelor's that I figured out teaching was the area, and that was the big question: what do I do with the sociology degree? But I just trusted the system in a way because I didn't know any better, and really opportunities kind of came about. And one of them was because I was working at LA Valley College in the admissions office, and someone knew that I was getting a bachelor's degree, so opportunities kind of popped up. And
Mhm.
so really, I knew that the teaching jobs would be very few, but I didn't care. I knew that this was the thing. I knew that this was in my soul. And like a lot of people, when they know they found their passion, then the doors kind of open, right? And then I walked through a few of them that didn't open. And then I ended up luckily at LA Mission College, where I've been very, very happy for the last 20 years.
Awesome. That's really cool. So you were born, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Bordeaux, France?
Bordeaux,
But
it's
yes.
just a city in the south of France. Yeah.
Hmm. So, and then you moved to, out of all the places in the US, you guys moved to North Hollywood. So, I'm curious to know how the education system varied from there to here, and why did you choose to educate yourself here?
Well, I didn't choose, right? Because I was 11 years old. So my parents decided to come to the US. And the majority of the reason was the same for many immigrants, right? Their family was already here. So my father's family had already moved here in the late 60s, and he had his eyes on the American dream.
Hmm.
The education in France is free, it's high quality. So by age 11, when I left, I was just starting to learn English. I was already learning Latin. I had already taken anatomy courses, right? So the education level was very high, and it's free,
Hmm.
and you go full day. And so there was really no comparison. And we moved into an apartment in North Hollywood on Blake Street, which is now known for a gang. But it was a huge shift culturally and socially, and in many ways we went backwards. But that was not what my father was thinking. He was thinking he had made it, and so we adjusted, right? And so really and that's why I had skipped a grade and a half when they tested me. But unfortunately, that kind of advantage of being early really didn't prove to be an advantage for me because I didn't go straight into college, right? And so it left me floundering because my parents didn't know the system. But I don't regret it at all. I think going to work was really, really important for me in my path. And so in terms of, my parents came to the US to get less than most immigrants do. And so that's very unusual. Usually people come here to improve their lives. My parents did it backwards.
Hmm.
So it's a little tricky because there was universal health care in France and we had no insurance here. And really, my parents divorced there. They really couldn't, all the cultural changes they couldn't make it in their own marriage. And so I think that you see, the impact of immigration and in a different way, right? So really I was lucky that I found a community college and a path to some stability and success with education.
Hmm. So, going into college after working, what was that like?
It was hard. The first semester, I think, and this is why I think I relate a lot to students who are reentry students who come in and they're kind of shy and they're worried. And I knew I could write memos, but I didn't know I could write essays. And so luckily, I took English 28, which was kind of that beginning English course. And the teacher said to me, my reentry students do really well. And it kind of stuck in my head. And I said, okay. And then I just started working and I started just redoing those essays I didn't have the skills to do. And so I was in the right environment to go up and to improve my skills. And I think that because I had been in leadership positions in the real world, I had enough confidence to know that I could do it, that I could probably learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of, met the girl next to me, then asked for questions, in class. And, women were very good at doing that, right? Reaching out and asking for help. And so I did that. And if there was a place for me to go get help, I went and I did it. I wasn't too proud to do it. And so I think that helped me a lot, is just really reaching out. And at the time, teachers weren't really doing office hours, but I asked anyways. So I don't know if I followed them, but I asked the questions until I had the answer.
Mm-hmm. Would would you recommend for the sociology degree for kids to go straight into a 4 year or do what you did and go into college?
Well, I think some students are ready to go straight from high school to college. I think it has a lot to do with how prepared they are to leave home, and if their parents are able to provide them stability, financially to go directly. Because a lot of my students end up going straight to a university, but then after the first year, they find out how expensive it is, and they don't have the resources and or the support in the area to be successful. So they come back home feeling deflated, like they had failed. But really, it was just that they didn't have the right support system to be successful in that first year and on. So, it really depends. I think sometimes the personality of the student is, ready to go and ready to fly. And then other students need a little bit more time. And so community colleges are really great to explore even while you're in high school. And I think that's a really great way to kind of figure out which student you are, not just in the finances, but in your organization. And are you really ready to leave home? And are your parents ready to let you go? Because that's another cultural issue too, is that sometimes parents are like, well, Mija, I kind of still need you to watch your sister. And so
Mm-hmm.
then they're away and they're hearing that, there's nobody to watch their sister. And so these kinds of pressure also add on. So really, it's a big, I don't have a straight answer because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. Like it could vary depending on that individual's certain situation.
Yeah.
So coming out of college and going into Cal State University Northridge, um, some people, they decide to educate themselves within a private university or a UC, but you decided to take the CSU route. So I'm curious to know as to why you did that.
Again, lack of information. I actually applied to two schools, UCLA and CSUN. These were the only two schools I applied to, but I really hadn't met all the requirements for a UC.
Mhm.
But at the time, again, not knowing any better, I just went ahead, filled out the application, and CSUN luckily took me, and it was close to work. So, it was really it was affordable and it was close to work. So I could make it happen because I worked full time the entire time I was in school.
Mhm.
So those are the two decisions, really. This is close by, it's affordable, I can do it. I did it in 2 years. I did the next one in 18 months. So it was all like, just, really charging things on my credit card a lot of times and then trying to reimburse it later. But it was just, I was really tunnel vision and I just never thought that I couldn't do it. I just thought, okay, keep doing one semester at a time.
Mhm.
And by then I was also married, and so my husband and I we both were going to CSUN. So I always say that the earth shook when I started because literally the 1994 earthquake happened the semester we started college.
Oh wow.
So, but the fact that we had our finances together also helped us get through our college education.
Mhm. If you were more educated on it, do you think you would go back and get your degree at a UC, or do you think you were happy with the choice that you made?
Well, my oldest daughter has completed a degree at a UC, and so now that I've seen exactly what she was able to be introduced to, which is a lot of research and just so many different opportunities, I would have wanted to have had more choices, right? I would have wanted to be able to, apply to multiple schools, and UC schools are notorious for research. And so that would have been an area that I really would have wanted to do more in. But again, the path of the path, and I don't regret the one that I've taken because I was able to complete everything and do it at a fast pace, which is what I wanted to do. Even though I was only 20 when I started college, I was really motivated to just get done. And so there was no time to waste. And I also wanted to start, family and start my life. And so, again, knowing more choices now, yes, I would have loved to have gone to a UC school and really learned more and been introduced to actual research and just there's so much that's available to students today. But this was also doable, and those were my finances at the time, and that was my situation at the time. So I think it all worked out.
Mm-hmm. So, coming out of your bachelor's from Northridge, you also decided to stay in Northridge and get your master's too. Was there a reason why? Because I've seen a few people who get their bachelor's at a CSU, but then they decide to go to a UC or a private university for their master's. So, did you end up liking the school, or was it just something you just thought of?
Really, I think in the last year of my bachelor's, I found out that they had a master's program, and it was just a really smooth transition right into that master's program. And so my husband was still at CSUN, also completing his education. So at the time, it just made sense just to keep going and just keep doing it where I was there. Again, I didn't know about all these other programs, and so I was kind of really in my little San Fernando Valley bubble, right? I didn't really move too far out of there. And again, if I'd known more, I probably could have, applied to different areas. But at the time, that's what I knew. And it was a good program, and I was able to move at a really high speed. So
Mm-hmm.
I was really happy with it.
So, how would you say your life differed now that you had a job with your degree versus before when this was like before college, like before you had any degree to your name?
Well, what I can tell you is that my life before a college education was working 60, 70 more hours a week to be successful in the corporate world, to not have a life, really. I had an apartment that I barely, showered and slept in. So I had independence very early on. I moved out at 18 and I worked independently after that. But I think that it was the lesson I needed to learn, that there's more to life than just working insane hours and making the bills and surviving, which is really what my parents had always done. And once I saw that there was an opportunity to do something different, I really didn't know how it was going to be different, but I knew that they had to be more to life. And when I became a college teacher, just even as an adjunct, and I was able to kind of choose my hours and choose the classes. And so I taught at night so I could be with my kids during the day. There was a flexibility to teaching that, again, I didn't know I could have. And really, in the end, to be able to have a full-time career and raise my girls at the same time and make the bills and live in a decent area, these were all choices that I would have never had with the college education, and choices that my parents and even my family members don't have to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really value the fact that I have, the college education was this foundation for a lot of opportunities I would have never had in any other position.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that because I started working when I was around 17, 18, and it was, a typical, minimum wage job at a grocery store. And um, I see like, because I have friends that are older than me that have degrees, and I see how much more, I guess, independence they have too. Because they can work from Monday to Friday and have the weekend off. Some person with a minimum wage job probably won't get that, and they're, only 2 days are Monday and Thursday, and it's all, all over the place. So I do agree that when you do get your degree, you do have a certain level of stability now that you have with your time. And that's also a really good thing that a degree can get you, whether it's only 2 years or only 4 years, it all around it definitely helps you in that aspect. So,
Well, and also the benefits too that come with it, right? So not just the hours, but the medical benefits. So
yeah.
really, the first time I got the job with the district was the first time I'd been fully medically insured.
Hmm.
And that means I was in my 20s and we had arrived at 11, age 11, right? So that's 10 years without seeing regular doctor, regular dentist, and these are like small things, but are they? Not really. If I had a medical condition, this would have been huge, right? So it's not just the job, but it's the job, the flexibility, and the benefits that come with it. And again, the choices of schedules are one of them, and it's just a better quality of life. And if it's available to you, and once you find out it's available to you, it's hard not to grasp that. But I think that working as a working class kid is very addicting because you get that paycheck. But a
Hmm.
college education takes some planning, some waiting, right? So it's like this goal that comes later, while your job gives you a check right now. And so
Yeah.
that's very addictive. And I see my own students sometimes tell me that, I've got this job and I'm like, okay, but it's very short term in terms of there's no growth for opportunities for, moving up. And so but again, I can see why people stay in it because you're like, it's instant gratification while college is like a really delayed goal that's
Hmm.
hard and expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is. Um, so coming back to your major, what do you love about your major that sets it apart from any of the other majors that are out there?
It's applicable. That means like you're studying real life. You're studying what's happening in the news. You're studying everything that impacts everyone every day, every moment of the day. So the first thing is that it's really applicable. If I run into a person that says to me, oh, I took sociology in college, but I didn't like it, I knew that they didn't have the right teacher because you cannot not like sociology. It's about us. It's about all of us. And so that's the first thing is that it's applicable and to everyone. And it's also that the research really can be used in your own life. And a lot of students go into psychology because of that, right? But psychology is much more specific on the individual. And so it has a different format. And the other issue is that you can really walk into any job with a degree in sociology and basically say, I'm an expert in people. Who and what job can you not use that for? So I have a lot of students who are thinking about criminology. They are thinking about child development. They are thinking of social work or therapy or any of those jobs. All those jobs are going to need this type of degree and courses as the background. And
Hmm.
so as people explore, they can go into law. They can go in politics. My own daughter who graduated from UC Davis in sociology, went straight to work at the state capitol in Sacramento. And so you have opportunities because you're saying, I know what people's problems are. I know how to study them. And these are my expertise. And there's just tons of things that she uses on a daily basis based on what she learned. And criminology was a big part of it. And so it's really applicable. It's useful for almost every career and it's a great foundation for just nearly about anything that you want to study.
Hmm. So, okay, you got your master's in 1998, and I'm gonna make you feel just a little old. And I was born in 1998. So while you were in school, I was just, just coming out. So I'm curious to know how sociology in and of itself has changed since you have been out of school with the master's.
I think that what I've seen is that sociology, like a lot of other disciplines, was a very, again, broad focused, and we just weren't learning things about race and ethnicity, for example. Gender was really covered from a white working, white middle class perspective. And just as I was finishing my graduation, my master's, I was starting to hear more about race and ethnicity, but there was no background in that in terms of in my education. And one of my first teaching job was to teach race relations. And I was panicked because I thought, wow, I have very little background in this. And so I had to go way back and go learn history. I had to learn a lot of different groups' history, and I'm still learning, right? So I mean, we're all still learning, but I think that the biggest changes are really diving into people of color, to the issues of gender and how it's changed dramatically, LGBTQ research, even just research in general. I teach social psychology, which is a combination of both disciplines, and that is also, really important. Just really continuing to educate yourself as when you're done with the degree, you're never done learning, which is
Mhm.
really funny because I was like, oh, I can't wait to get rid of these textbooks all the time. And now I'm a college teacher and I'm reading textbooks all the time to find affordable ones. Or, I teach family, and some of the families are really not inclusive. And so it's only really looking at heterosexual family. And I'm like, I can't use this book. There's nothing here for my students. We need to know that there's many types of families. So I would say that sociology has changed in terms of being much more inclusive in its research, just as we've all, been growing in the society, but not just in the last couple of years, in the last 15 or 20 years. And so I think that that's what's changing, is that, the lens is widening, which we've needed for a really long time.
Mhm. And you also, being that you teach sociology, you got your bachelor's, but you got it with an emphasis in gender. Why the emphasis in gender? And were there other emphases that you were interested in, but that one drew to you, or?
Yeah, actually at the time, there was probably, I think that we had about three choices. One was social welfare. I knew social work wasn't the area I was specifically passionate about. I think the other area was criminology, and I had some experience in that also, and it wasn't grasping me. But gender just seemed to open my eyes to a lot of things that most women, already notice, but just don't have the words to put into it. And so my parents were very traditional, and I was not. And I wanted a 50-50 relationship. And so it was kind of learning all that. But again, it was the gender of the, middle class white woman. And as I learned more, I was like, oh my God, I got gypped, because this was not the full picture. Feminism needs to include women of color. It needs to include women with no education, women with, political, regimes that restrict their ability to do anything, including getting an education.
Mhm.
So, all of that. So gender was just one of the three things that I was drawn to. And I just continued to be really interested in. And again, it fit my life. It fit what I was questioning. And I really, it helped me also build what I was looking for in a partner, and in marriage, and what that was going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Um I would also say that because I've taken sociology before, and it was a pretty interesting class. It was called American Social Problems, and because I'm doing engineering, so
Ooh,
I'm
excellent.
just I'm just doing math and physics and chemistry all day. So there's no, necessary emotion. It's just all calculations, analytical thinking, logical thinking. But I was also kind of thankful that we do have, general eds where we are taking art, we are taking, sociology, we are taking these extra
Right.
classes because, obviously with any job, you're dealing with people. And how are you gonna, properly deal with people if all you're doing is calculations and testing, chemical experiments all day? So
Right.
I am thankful for that. So I also see that you went to the UCLA Extension and the University of Laverne. So can you kind of tell me what you did there and why you decided to continue pursuing more education even after your master's?
Well, a little bit about what I was saying earlier was that I needed to continue to learn more. And so those universities, the UCLA Extension was really one of the first programs to teach online education, way back in 1999. And so that, I think I paid like $500 for that class. It was super expensive, but I knew that this was an area of interest. I was getting jobs that were requiring me to do both, kind of do the hybrid as we know it today. And so a lot of it was just to build some skills. But the University of Laverne was really just continuing education. And so I was taking classes on, being a teacher that is the only, that is not multicultural. I was looking at how to reach my students so that, it wasn't, because empathy I already have for them, but I needed to learn more about their lives, and even how language plays a role in how students write. French, for example, we put the verb and the noun at different areas that the Americans do. And so when I started to see that my students who are mainly Latinx generation are doing certain things with their words in their English essays, then I was able to capture that, okay, that's the same thing they're using with their natural language. And so you just have a bigger, wider understanding, and then you can adjust your material. I've never adjusted the quality of the class, but it makes you be able to reach your students in a different way. So I just really continue to, and I still do. I have lots of books on my nightstands that continue to. I'm not satisfied. I know enough about a lot of people's history, and so when you have that basic knowledge, then you can reach your students in different ways. So it was really, I wasn't required to. I needed to know more so that I could walk into a race relations class as a white woman and go, I got you, like we're going to go on this path together, not because I know everything, but because I'm open to hearing other perspectives. And here's what the research shows, and let's talk. And that's not always easy to do. And but that was the challenge, is to be able to know enough to know more, really, never enough. So I'm just not satisfied I know enough about anything. So that's basically the reason I continue to take classes to this day. And now with the pandemic, I'm constantly taking, webinars on new ways to do things online, so that I'm, again, making sure I'm up to date and I can reach my students, because now I have to do it through a screen or I have to do it through an essay. So it's a lot more challenging.
Yeah. School in general, since the whole thing has started, has been so hard. I think for me, especially as, a STEM major,
Yeah.
all of our labs, were gone. All of the work was just a PowerPoint,
Yeah.
and it was pretty hard because most of those STEM majors, they need to be, they're in person, working with these chemical reactions, working in the lab.
Oh,
And then, to have that all gone was a major shift for a lot of us. And there were some teachers that tried their best, but it still wasn't the same. um so what would you say the atmosphere is like within the sociology major? Because there are some majors where if you're doing like biomedical engineering, it's very analytical, very logical, people are very straightforward. But what would you say the atmosphere is like, within your major?
Our major is, in the old days, I'd call it chalk and talk, right? Where you have the board and you kind of discuss things. And, at this point, obviously, we're all on distance education. So, it's discussion, it's writing, it's the atmosphere is one of exploration together. And, in a normal classroom, again, when you've got 40 or 50 people, which is my average class size, I want to get them in groups and talking about different things. And so, sociology is known for discussion. I can't really say, okay, this is the theory of this family, for example, and go, okay, then it applies to everyone. Let me hear how this doesn't apply to everyone, and who is it leaving out. So it's really about discussion and exploration. So we are the feel good people, in terms of not just the helpers, but we want to discuss. We want to sit in a coffee shop and talk about isms. So it's a lot of that, but it's also structured and it's also research based. It's not my opinion. It's multiple theories and studies done. So at first, students really get hooked to the subjects because they're great for discussions. but you've got to go deeper and you've got to go, where is this information coming from? And really the hardest parts for sociology students is to find out how to do the research and how difficult the research is, because it becomes analytical and it becomes what you were just describing in calculations. And they're like, wait, what? No, I just want to talk about racism. I don't want to study it. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to study it? We're just going to ask people how they feel. It's like, no, we need more information, right? So it's kind of how the best sociology students are the ones who've already got a natural passion for the discipline, but also understand the analytical parts of doing research and doing it well so that we can count on those results. So that's a good combination for a sociology major.
Mm-hmm. So besides, doing research, and doing, papers, was there ever a moment where if it felt very mentally demanding for you, whether it was in your bachelor's or your master's? So,
Yeah, I think that what is, it's exhausting to learn the negative parts of society.
mhm,
So as exciting as the field is, when you take a full semester on serial killer, it's really hard to leave it in the classroom, right? You come home late at night and you're like, okay, what would it be like if I find my family cut up in pieces, right? It's these
yeah,
kinds of, that's the mental exhaustion of learning the really dark stuff about society. And actually the teacher who taught the course specifically said, everything in this class is going to be negative: child abuse, incest, rape, serial killers. And it's like, wow. But it was an introduction to counseling, right? So you have to know that these things are occurring because you're going to be helping people who have been victimized by this. And so in a way, that's what's exhausting about sociology, is that you really are facing, genocide, right? Those are some of the topics I cover in my race relations class: hate crimes. This isn't all pretty, and we can't just talk about, oh, my husband didn't do the dishes and that's what gender's about, right? This is dark, hard stuff. And so that's the mental exhaustion, is to understand that this is really negative information, but it's also very real and it has solutions, and we need to have those resources for people. So if we don't study this dark stuff, then no one can get over it, right? Or not over it, but can get the treatment they need. So
yeah,
it's balancing this really negative stuff. And what I tell my students, I said, I know this is hard stuff, but there's also solution and there's also treatments. And there's also another part, which is that we can stop these things from occurring if we know it's happening. We know that people are sexually abused by people who've been victims of sexual abuse. So if we know that and we can stop some of that, then maybe we can make those changes. And awareness and silence is deadly for abuse, because that's how it continues. So it's balancing the really hard stuff, the hope, and the fact that there are solutions and ways to reduce them.
yeah. So what were some classes that you remembered you enjoyed and some that you kind of disliked that were required for the sociology major?
Um, I think the serial killer class, which was the introduction to counseling class, was definitely mind opening. And probably because, I mean, luckily for me, I didn't have any of those situations happening in my own life or family,
Mhm.
but understanding that they were happening to other people. So I think I was a little traumatized by it, but in a way that was
Just
necessary,
a little,
right?
you know?
Just a little, right?
Like
So the, yeah,
you're like making toast in the morning and it pops and you just panic and you're like, they're here to get me, you know?
it took me years to be able to buy a little frozen, the freezers, that you put like in your garage for extra items, because there was so many serial killer bodies found, like just victims were, I was like, I couldn't even like go into a store and open it. I was very traumatized for a long time. And of
Wow.
course, anyone who's watched Law and Order will feel the same way.
Hmm.
But so there was that. I think I really enjoyed learning social work, just as a course. The woman who taught it at the time had been working with gangs, but she'd been working with gangs in the late 60s, where the worst thing they had was a knife. And so she made us really understand how that had changed, and how the drug cartels really played a role in that. So that was really interesting. I think that just doing internships was really valuable. I did an internship as a TA for a third grade class really interesting. I really found out I didn't want to work with small children, not because I didn't enjoy it, but it wasn't the thing that was grasping me. I
Mhm.
wanted adults to have conversations. I worked with women who were incarcerated, so that was really interesting. I did that for about a year, and you know, I counseled a woman who'd been a CSUN student and made some wrong choices, and that's what separated us with a glass, you know, with this glass. So I think that the courses that were really impactful were the ones where there was a lot of hands-on and
Mhm.
or in subjects that I had not really been ever properly educated. And then the courses I had a hard time with were really the research course. I didn't have a good background. I didn't take my courses in order at the community college, so that didn't help. So I changed that at Mission College to make sure that my students were working through the proper courses so that by the time they got to the university, they're more successful than I was. I struggled a lot in statistics, like a lot of people. But once I found the right teacher, then I was good to go because I already had the analytical. I just needed to be taught the proper information. So I think that those are really kind of the combination of courses, and the general ed it was great because everything I was learning in general ed added to my knowledge for sociology. So I really liked a lot of that.
Yeah. So, okay, you just said that you did internships. Can you kind of tell me like what those look like and what you did? Because for me, I just assumed that only STEM students got internships and like other majors, it was just like do the thing
Yeah.
and get the paper.
For me, Valley College already had in the sociology department, they'd been multiple faculties who had been doing internships as
Mhm.
courses. And they're called directed studies usually. And so one of the teachers there was really active in doing that. So because I was already taking class at Valley College, then I was taking the class with him which on serial killers. And he said, oh, I also teach this internships if you guys are interested. And so, you know, I checked it out and it was exactly what it was described, some really hands-on ways to learn how to apply what I was learning in the classroom. Then you know, going to a TA to be a TA at a school was done through CSUN because as you complete your bachelor's, you have to do internships as part of your requirements. So you have to find one or they kind of guide you into one. So it's really developed by the colleges. And so at Mission, I created internships at MEND, which is in Pacoima, which is a nonprofit agencies. And they offer a variety of services to people in the community. So I place my students there because if they want to do social work, well, let me show you what it looks like. Because students are like, oh, people are going to love me for helping them. They don't understand people have mental challenges and they're going to be like, you know, rude when you give them free food and all kinds of things, right? So
Mhm.
it's really the way for them to explore if this is the area for them or not. So I try to really have some of these opportunities. I wish I had more resources at Mission College to do more of that, because I think a lot of our students would benefit from exploring at that level before they get to a bachelor's.
Yeah. Yeah, I would also agree that internships, even in college, are very important because sometimes these students they can get their associates and then go into the bachelor's, but then they realize once they do internships they don't like it, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
Yeah,
it's kind of too late because they already got into that program. So
yeah.
I do think that it is very important. Um, what are some key or important pieces of advice that you would give someone going into the sociology field
At any level.
at any level, whether
Uh,
it's going
yeah, I
into
mean,
college or they're in their master's?
so I would say that if you first are starting out and you're just in that first sociology one course, really explore a variety of subjects. So most community colleges or universities have a variety of subjects. So maybe criminology isn't the area that you might think about, but maybe you're some interested, go check it out. Like really do a wide look at different courses because some of those areas are going to help you eliminate them or add them to, okay, this is really what I want to be doing. And so I think that's really important, is to just take a wide area of courses so that you can really explore the major, and then take a look at what each university is also offering. My youngest daughter is going to be starting at San Jose State University. and they have a very strong sociology program in inequality. And so that means that you're going to have a wide variety of opportunities to learn, and they probably have work in the community as well. And so it's just really do your research. If you're interested in sociology and you're interested in a specific university, that's fine, but have a wide lens as to the kind of program they offer, because they offer a variety of things. So
Mhm.
the big things to know about is that everybody wants to go in criminology. And so sometimes criminology areas get they get a lot of applicants. So be open to just, again, looking at doing your research at different universities.
Yeah. So, reflecting on all the education that you've had once you were done with school after the master's, were there some things you didn't necessarily like about your major as to how it was probably constructed or structured, maybe, or just anything in general you weren't necessarily happy with?
Yeah, I would say that, like I mentioned before, not having enough race relations courses or just ethnic courses in history, I think it was lacking that for sure. At the community college level, again, preparation for research or just even the beginning research courses was lacking. Also, those are the two areas that I can say that were, not as efficient in moving forward. Um, I feel like I've forgotten what the rest of the question was. What was the rest of the question?
It was like how was there anything that you like disliked about the major, whether it
Oh,
was like how the classes were structured or any of that?
yeah, no, I think the only other thing that what I don't like about sociology is that people don't take it seriously because they say it's a soft science, and that's fine. But we are a very research based science, and so I think the reputation of STEM and sociology, for example, you can't they're not the same, and the requirements for what you need to do to complete it are not the same, but they attract different people. And so that's okay because we need a variety of trained people in this society to do a lot of different things. And so I loved every class. I didn't love every teacher, but I loved every class. And even like demography, which was the study of populations, which is a very boring topic, was actually really interesting because he made us go do research. I went to UCLA's library for the first time ever to do research for that course. And so, you find the good in all courses. And boy, is there so much to understand about the census and how it plays a role in our research in sociology. So, every class had, every single thing I've learned just really added to the core of what I needed to learn. And as a teacher, you have to continue learning because you really can't stop.
Yeah. So, during your first time working, how did you find your strengths? And well, first of all, how did you feel, finally having a job with a degree?
I think it's extremely empowering, especially if you come from a family that doesn't have a lot of education. I think that I understood even when I got my AA degree that the graduation ceremony was super meaningful to me and to my family and to the whole community, really, because when you watch even other students getting their degree, I continued to work the graduation at Mission College because I love seeing the families there, supporting their students of all ages, right? So it's extremely empowering. And it's so I think that's the key is it empowers you just personally because you've done something. No one can ever take that education away. I use that education not just in getting a job, but in everything that I do. When there are parenting problems, when they are, when I'm trying to figure out why I don't feel so good, I can do research. Like I know to look for resources. So that's the lifelong learning you get from an education.
Hmm.
And I understand that there's always more than one perspective. That I think is super helpful in life in general. And so I think that that's what education does is it gives you choices and it gives you personal power and in financial power in the end. And those are just the ultimates. I mean, what else is there after that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, how would you say, with all these combined job and work experiences, have made and helped you become the person you are today?
Well, I think working early in my life was a really good foundation for me. It gave me a sense of worth, and that was really, it wasn't present in other areas of my life. So I think work was my identity for a really long time. And so that was a good foundation. And then to go into education after having worked in the real world, you understand the privilege that education or working in education gives you. You know, I always find it funny when my colleagues, when we come back in the fall, they're like, oh, the summer wasn't long enough. And I'm like, I don't know a single job where you get 2 months off, right? And so it's that kind of, understanding that because you've been outside of education, you understand the value of it and you understand why working in education is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really big part of really, again, understanding the privilege of having an education and what to do with it. Did
Yeah.
I answer your question?
Yes. So, with
So
any,
empowering you.
yeah, definitely. Um, with with any major involves teamwork. So, what does teamwork look like within sociology, and how important is it?
It's very, very important. So my career admission was actually interesting because I was the only full-time faculty for a very, very long time. So I really didn't have the camaraderie of a full team. We're a small college, so it took some time to build a strong sociology program. And I was really hired as the only faculty. So I counted on my other colleagues in other disciplines for that collaboration. So, I became chair of the department within 4 years of being tenured admission. And so then I had to build that collaboration. So I hired a lot of adjuncts faculty. Then we were finally able to start hiring some full-time faculty. They weren't in sociology, it was history and psych and political science. We started to build the team. And it's crucial. It's crucial to a small community college that you have a great collaboration with a wide variety of people, because we're going to all be on different committees and we need to represent different groups. And so it's vital to learn how to work with others in collaboration on campus, not even just in your own department, but in other departments, because there's so many committees that need to do work, and to create a culture that's really student focused.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree that teamwork, it's not just, within your specific line of study. It involves many different fields, because even if it is just, in a small company, you need other people from different, educational backgrounds to work on one project where they all come together, and I would definitely agree with that.
And I would say that the pandemic taught us how valuable that is. Like, I miss running into my coworkers in the hallway,
oh yeah.
even just going to my office, right? So you miss that camaraderie of just joking or just talking about, whatever's going on campus, right? So we're recreating that on Zoom, and it's really hard to do. It's very isolating to be home without coworkers, even the
Yeah.
ones you don't specifically love. But you know what? Just the whole group, there's always people you're gonna, not get along with as well. But it's the group atmosphere that we're all in this, in this bubble together. And I do miss that. I miss that terribly. Because that wasn't the job. The job wasn't for me to stay in my office at home alone. The job was to interact with my students, talk to them in the hallway, and also build the camaraderie with the other faculty.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. What are some of your most proudest accomplishments from getting a sociology major? Whether it was finishing your master's thesis or your internships or anything.
I don't think I understood the value of my master's degree until I had kids, until I got divorced, until I really was on my own to make a lot of decisions. And so I would say that just even getting my AA degree was so important to me. And then moving forward with my bachelor's and my master's, all those were really important moments for me. But I think that in looking back now, right, 20 plus years later, the ability to raise my girls, to provide for them, to provide for myself, to have a retirement plan, right? Things you never think about in your 20s. These were all things that came about because I started with education. And so every decision that I made getting those degrees ended up really paying me back in a variety of ways, in knowing what was going on with other people's lives and understanding that, and also giving me choices to raise my children, to adjust through a divorce, even through immigration, right? So all of those, just really the whole thing started with education. It was the spark that made a lot of other decisions happen. So I
Yeah.
think all of it I'm very proud of. And I also know that it's possible for my students. So I want that for them as well, if they
Mhm.
want it.
Yeah. So talking about the good, we also have to talk about the bad, which happens with anyone because we're not perfect. What was one of the biggest mistakes you made while at work, and how did you bounce back from it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
You were either it was at work or in school.
I think in the world of work, you find out a lot about how to balance who you are and what are the politics of the job. So I think that for me, it was to really go through some of my own personal challenges with other people at work, just again outside of work. I think when you have things that happen that cause pain, you create a lot of empathy, and as hard as those moments are, they really teach you how to be better at work with your students. So I would say that all those painful moments that are hard to get through also teach you how to open up more so that you can also provide that empathy, that perspective to other people. So I would say that at work, it was really balancing what it means to be a woman at work, really, really hard to balance, where you can be, I'm extremely direct, I'm a go-getter, I'm confident, and that works really well in an environment with men, but it doesn't necessarily translate with women. And which is really interesting because I teach all about the sisterhood, and then sometimes that sisterhood is missing. And so we get to a level, I'm very proud that I built the social science department at Mission College. It took over 10 years to build that. I'm extremely proud of that. And now it's set. It doesn't matter who's in it. It will continue to help a lot of students, explore a lot of different majors. But there was a lot of pain in doing that. Also, it was, really long hours managing 5 classes and, 60 people. But so those are hard things to do, but they live on. And so that's also a good strategy. But I would say that I had to figure out how to balance who I am and my personality and work within the work of world, which is don't be too confident, make sure you're listening, right? Balance being, assertive and not a bitch. And, and then balance the fact that other people are going to take it differently, and so you got to work with those different personalities, and then just also really stand your values. And so when I had problems at work, I knew that I could walk into my classroom and that was therapy, because I knew what I was doing there. So even when they are work problems, I knew that the goal was in the classroom. The focus is in the classroom. Everything else will work its way, it'll work out. You just got to keep an eye on the prize, and the prize is the classroom, is getting those students to that stage or that next level. And sometimes it's just one class. It's just getting them through that one class and helping them forward.
Yeah. So before we go, I did want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
So obviously with anyone majoring in anything different, whether it's chemistry or nursing, we're all contributing to society.
For sure.
So how do you feel like you have contributed to society with a sociology major?
Ooh, well, I mean, I think in in attracting a lot of students to this field, I think is one of the ways in which I've done my share in the classroom. Sometimes it's just, again, to get them through one class, but also it's to introduce them to this great field where they have the power to also go out and change, institutions. I tell my students all the time, it's nice to get a job, but you've got to have a position of power where you can make some long-term change. And I think that's what I figured out being a department chair at Mission, was I could make some changes that would impact for a lifetime, and more, hopefully more than one generation. So it's really about, making sure that they had the support they needed to get through their education and then to do their own work in making small changes. But I would also say that empowering my own children to do the same, right? So you can't, I'm a walking lecture in terms of what I do and what I learn. I don't leave it at the job. It comes into my dinner table. And so it was also inspiring my own kids to not just get an education and get a job, but to do something good. And even if it's just learning to begin with and seeing where there's a piece of the puzzle. As I drive around and I see homelessness, there's nothing that bothers me more than that I have 3 college degrees, but I can't do much about this problem. And that there are people in the streets sleeping, and there's somebody's, son and wife and somebody. And those are the things that frustrate me. But I also think that that's where I'm counting on the next generation to keep going. We've got a lot of great people doing a lot of different things. And if you're just looking at the companies who sell a product and then donate to society, like, people combine business and social work all together. And so I have a lot of faith that millennials are going to learn to interact better socially. I hope that. But I also know that they're changing the world in a different way. And I love it. I love seeing it. And I love, sparking the fire for my students.
Yeah. Well, Miriam, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you
Like,
guys so much for watching. If you have any other questions for next episode, please leave them in the comments below. And I thank Miriam for coming on, and I thank you guys for watching. So thank you, Miriam, so much.
you're welcome.